Growing up sexy was not easy for me. I always felt different than everyone else. Well, not different, just sexier, I guess.
And the Emmy for directing in a drama series goes to Jason Bateman.
That nasty guy, Jason Bateman.
He killed my dad.
We love you.
I love you.
I love you. One and only Jason Bateman.
So our friend Jason Bateman, everybody.
Jason Bateman has been in the entertainment industry for nearly his whole life, and yet throughout all of his time in the spotlight, he has continued to maintain relevancy and his career seems to be doing better than ever. With him starring and directing in some of Netflix's biggest projects, as well as capturing the hearts of an alarming amount of people with his role as Nick Wilde from Zootopia 1 and 2.
Hey Flash, wanna hear a joke?
No!
However, throughout his career, Bateman has been faced with one major criticism.
Jason Bateman is Jason Bateman.
Yes, Jason Bateman played Jason Bateman.
Well, which part do you want to play? We both agreed that people are going to be expecting me to play, you know, the boring guy.
The sarcastic, dry-witted, mild-mannered guy who's forced to deal with the antics of the dysfunctional people around him is a character that he's been playing since Arrested Development in 2003. As a satire on the ultra-wealthy, the Bluth family is one of the most bizarre, selfish, and over-the-top families on TV. But without Jason Bateman's Michael Bluth being there to witness all of their antics, the show wouldn't really work in the same way. As the only quote-unquote normal character in the show, Michael Bluth is sort of the lens that we, the audience, see the entire show through. Without Michael, every character in the show would be so unrealistic and over-the-top that the absurdity would lose its charm. And while Michael Bluth is probably no one's favorite character in the show, his presence as a straight man to the rest of his family is what allows the rest of the show to work so well.
And secondly, I know you're the big marriage expert. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Your wife is dead.
By having one quote-unquote normal character amidst all of the bizarre and absurd characters, he's able to elevate the show by providing it with a tiny bit of groundedness and realism, which makes all of the absurd elements have a much stronger impact. Bateman's dry, deadpan delivery, juxtaposed with everyone else's over-the-top performances, is part of the formula that allowed this show to become one of the funniest and most critically acclaimed sitcoms of all time. And considering the critical success of the show, as well as of Jason Bateman's performance, it's no surprise that he began getting cast in films where he would play a similar role. In 2008, 2 years after the cancellation of Arrested Development, Bateman would star in the film Hancock, a movie where Will Smith plays an alcoholic superhero who enlists the help of a public relations specialist played by Jason Bateman in order to help repair his image. Because despite his somewhat good intentions, Hancock is kind of a terrible superhero.
I don't even remember that.
Greenpeace does.
Bateman again plays a mild-mannered straight man who has to solve the issues presented by the dysfunctional people around him, as he now has to rehabilitate the image of a superhero who is hated by everyone and who doesn't feel particularly inclined to change his ways.
She's right. She should sue you.
Okay, well, you should sue McDonald's, because they fucked you up, all right?
And similar to Michael Bluth in Arrested Development, Bateman is again able to bring a lot of humor to the movie by playing off the uniquely absurd situations presented to him by John Hancock.
Did you shove a man's head up another man's ass?
Over the following few years, Bateman would continue to get lead roles playing a similar character, and although he consistently manages to be pretty funny in every role he's in, it was clear that Jason Bateman was essentially playing himself in almost every movie.
Is Jason Bateman Canadian? How dare you?
But as his career continued into the 2010s, he began taking more unique roles. In 2013, Jason Bateman made his feature film directorial debut with a comedy film called Bad Words, which he also starred in as the lead character. And unlike his previous characters that are all pretty likable and mild-mannered, this character was far from either of those traits.
Hey, moms, let's break out the rubber pillowcases tonight. Little pricks are going to be counting tears, not sheep. Who's next?
And although the movie underperformed at the box office and received only mixed reviews, his performance and his directing were both very warmly received. And in 2015, Bateman would diverge from his typical comedy films to star in a psychological thriller called The Gift, a movie where he plays a seemingly loving husband named Simon whose life gets significantly altered when he accidentally bumps into one of his old high school classmates that he used to bully. It turns out that writer-director Joel Edgerton specifically wanted Jason Bateman for this role because he wanted to utilize Bateman's typecast as an everyman to subvert the audience's expectations when it's revealed that he is essentially the main villain of the film.
I wanted someone who would enter, that the audience could sort of enter the story with and go, he's a good guy, and then turn him throughout the movie so that this incredible darkness comes out, and then we start to see a character who we don't want to win. So having Jason was very exciting, very important to the movie.
Just like in his other roles, he's got a loving wife, a well-paying job, a nice house in the suburbs, and a dry sense of humor.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But where this movie subverts our expectations is through the way in which he achieves each of these things. Whereas his previous characters achieve each of these goals through legitimate means, Simon lies and manipulates the people around him to get what he wants. In order to get a promotion at work, he fabricates evidence that incriminates his competition, and in order to get his wife to stop being mad at him for being a high school bully, he pretends to go and apologize to the classmate that he used to bully, when in reality he just beats his ass again.
Okay? If you ever come near me or my family again, I will destroy you. Do you understand?
With Simon, Bateman combined his typical straight man character traits with some of the mean-spiritedness of his character in Bad Words, creating a character that was extremely unlikable while still remaining believable. With this role, he also proved that he had the acting chops to lead a dramatic film.
Okay? I made his life a living hell and I treated him like shit. Is that what you're trying to figure out? That I was an asshole? I was an asshole.
And as Bateman began exploring roles with more nuanced and morally questionable characters, he would eventually be given the lead role as Marty Byrde in Netflix's Ozark, which is arguably his best performance. In the show, Marty Byrde and his business partner are money launderers for the cartel, but when his business partner is revealed to be stealing money from the cartel kills him, and now Marty has to launder a bunch of money in a really short amount of time in order for the cartel to let him and his family live. With Marty Byrde, Bateman's performance draws many parallels to all of the most interesting attributes of all of his best characters. Despite being in constant fear of his life from the cartel, he remains mostly calm and rational throughout the entirety of the show, even as the characters around him are rarely thinking rationally.
What? No, you're not. No, you're not. Put that down.
And similar to his character in The Gift, Marty often lies and manipulates people in order to get what he wants. But whereas his character in The Gift remains very unlikable and irredeemable throughout the movie, Marty Byrde has a clear love for his family and even for Ruth that allows the audience to still feel a lot of sympathy for his character. Even when Marty does some pretty bad things to the other characters in the show, it never feels like he's doing it for the sake of causing harm to other people, but rather that he's doing it out of necessity because he doesn't have any other options. And while Marty Byrde is mostly calm and calculated throughout the show, it's when he isn't being calm or calculated that the show is at its most entertaining. Whether he's being tortured by the cartel, arguing with Wendy, or just reacting to whatever insane thing has happened in front of him, the show gives Jason Bateman many opportunities to show off his range as an actor.
Huh? Are you fucking crazy? Do you know who that guy works for?
One understated aspect of his performance as Marty Byrde is that his character is extremely confident.
If I want to put all $7,945,400 into a hot tub, get buck naked, and play Scrooge McDuck, that is 100% my business. Now where's my money?
Even when he's speaking to the cartel, who could realistically kill him in any episode, he maintains a level of confidence and composure that allows him to talk himself out of basically any situation. In one of the seasons, Marty has to work with a local mob group called the Kansas City Mob. And yet despite the fact that this mob possesses a lot of power and are more than capable of murder, whenever Marty talks to them, it still feels like he has the upper hand.
You come anywhere near me, my family, or Ruth again, the next time you see your son, he's gonna be hanging from a bridge in Juarez. You got that?
Not only does this make him a very entertaining character to watch, but it also makes Marty's moments of genuine vulnerability hit even harder. Overall, Jason Bateman's performance as Marty Byrde is, in my opinion, his most complex and layered performance to date, with him utilizing all of his best attributes as an actor to play a deeply flawed character that you still end up rooting for most of the time. From the late 2010s and onward, Jason Bateman would star in some of his most successful projects yet.
How can that be profitable for Frito-Lay?
Continuing to branch out into doing more nuanced characters and even playing the main antagonist in one of Netflix's biggest movies, Carry On.
Well, at least this is interesting.
Bateman would prove that he's still a great comedic actor with roles like Max from Game Night and even Nick Wilde from Zootopia, while still branching out with more serious roles in projects like Air and Black Rabbit. Even in the 2000s, Jason Bateman was a lot more than just his typical straight man character, with him starring in a fair number of comedy movies that strayed away from his usual typecast.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Including him playing a surprisingly creepy character in Juno.
I'm leaving, Vanessa.
What?
And his character in Dodgeball is particularly unique for him because rather than playing the straight man to the characters around him, his casting partner played by Gary Cole is essentially playing the straight man to him.
I sure do like pumpkins, Cotton.
So even though his characters tend to share a lot of the same traits, he has actually played quite a few interesting characters throughout his career. And although people tend to dismiss him as an actor that doesn't have a lot of range, he has proved throughout his career that he is a genuinely great actor. Even in the films where he's playing his usual character, Jason Bateman always manages to add a lot of humor to the film and is never the weak spot for the movie.
So my boss, who we're thinking about planning to kill, is dying in front of you and you saved his life?
Well, that sounds bad when you say it like that.
There's a reason his comedies are as successful as they are. He has great comedic timing, and his dry sense of humor is one that is consistently funny both on screen and off.
Jason Bateman here. I'm in the closet, as Will Arnett might say. We know.
And his characters are also extremely relatable because he often just plays normal people. His characters are also able to poke fun and make jokes at the expense of the more zany characters around him without becoming too mean-spirited, and I think this trait is what makes his characters so charming and likable. So even though many people might not view Jason Bateman to be a particularly versatile actor, I think he's great at what he does and that he has a lot more range than people give him credit for. And whereas I normally get pretty tired of seeing actors play the same character in almost everything they're in, for Jason Bateman, I'm always looking forward to seeing whatever he does next. So at least for me, Jason Bateman is the only good typecast actor in Hollywood.